I am not being hyperbolic when I say that for the foreseeable future, this is the worst series I will ever have to talk about in any depth when doing a review. There is nothing I will reference or have already referenced that I would choose this over. I'd rather watch Captain Planet because with the right frame of mind it can be so bad it's funny. Besides, at least it's an original production. They tried something new, and while they didn't succeed, they left a decent template if anyone tries to reboot it. I'd rather watch several episodes of Sky Dancers than another one of Disney's Little Mermaid. From what I've seen, it's not as well written as Dragonflies, but the writing overall seems decent enough. Throw in the awesome UK theme song as well as the ending, and I could easily get through it, especially since at least the villains are entertaining. But then how can I not enjoy characters who look like what would happen if Sega asked Tim Burton to design bosses for a new Nights into Dreams game?
I warned you, Muddle. No ifs, ands, or buts. Speaking of butts, it's time to play Kick the Can.
Forget Aladdin the Return of Jafar. As far as I'm concerned, this was ground zero for the direct-to-video sequels Disney churned out that were follow-ups to what were usually significantly better films at the very least. But while each of those is less than 90 minutes, watching the entire Little Mermaid show will be 10 hours of seeing Disney take a movie that, while not perfect, was a cornerstone for my fascination with animation as well as the foundation of my love for mermaids, and watching them suck away everything I liked about it until there is nothing of any substance left.
Gone! It's all gone. All of it's gone. Bye-bye. Woo, see ya.
Aside from R-rated versions of the story, Ariel's Undersea Adventures sits at the bottom of my totem pole for Little Mermaid adaptations. If it wasn't for the fact that the music for the credits was the same as the opening, I could have included this as an honorable mention in my top 12 outros video, because I have never been so happy in my life to see that a show is over. I've seen coloring books that were more captivating versions of the story. I know the series has its fans, and I am glad they enjoy it, but this show is just not for me. I really did try to go into it with an open mind to see if it was as bad as I remembered.
Yes, it is.
To see if the characters could ever be a fraction as charming as they were in the movie.
They can't.
To see if there was nothing that could possibly make me think that I was overly critical of this show.
Uh-huh.
The biggest thing I took away from watching it again was the realization that the original version of the story isn't as bad as I used to make it out to be. I thought that reading it again would be the hardest thing I had to do for this review, but compared to Disney's follow-ups, the original story has merit. It's emotionally manipulative, but at least it generates real emotion instead of boredom and annoyance. However, I do agree with Mary Poppins author P.L. Travers that the detail about how every good child she sees takes a year away from the 3 centuries she has to serve as a daughter of the air, while every tear she cries after seeing kids misbehave adds a day to her sentence is basically blackmailing children. My biggest complaint, though, is the whole thing about mermaids not having souls. Even if I were to view the Little Mermaid dying and getting a chance to earn a soul after 300 years of servitude, give or take, as a happy ending, which I do not, that still means her entire race is doomed to eventual oblivion. It's like the story is saying that it's not good enough to be a mermaid, which as a mermaid fan I find very insulting. All I can say to that is, Hans.
Shame on you.
The part about souls is often left out of many otherwise more faithful adaptations, and they are all the better for it. As I edited scenes from Disney's Little Mermaid show for this review, I found myself skimming through versions with unhappy endings afterwards as a palate cleanser and was amazed at how well done they could be. The Russian short from the 60s has the most beautiful animation of any Little Mermaid adaptation. The Toei version has great atmosphere, and the Reader's Digest version, despite the only voice acting being narration from Richard Chamberlain, is well designed with some very artistic moments for 70s television animation. But then again, during that time period, specials tended to be of a much higher quality than the regular animated series. Despite keeping the part about souls, they actually tried to fix the ending by confirming that her time has been fully served and that she hasn't been shedding 365 tears for every smile she makes.
The years passed quickly for the Little Mermaid because she smiled much more than she wept, and she passed beyond this troubled world into everlasting happiness.
It doesn't fix everything, but kudos to them for trying. With that in mind, I have watched some of these, and they can actually be very enjoyable until I reach the inevitable tragic conclusion. It made me realize that I don't hate these versions, I just hate how they end. I'm always with them right until the prince marries the princess. Then the following scenes just sour my opinion on the adaptation as a whole. It's like the Joker once said.
Remember, it's not the fall, it's the sudden stop.
I must be getting cynical in my old age, because despite all that, I am starting to think that I would rather watch a well-done Little Mermaid with a sad ending than a poorly done version with a happy ending, because the former is pretty much guaranteed to have more effort put into it. Even Walt Disney himself, despite struggling to adapt the story for film, wanted to give it a sad ending. I have to admit that most of my favorite Disney movies are post-Walt. They don't just come for the Renaissance. They range from the Bronze Age all the way to the 2010s. But nevertheless, he is one of the most sincere movie producers that ever lived. Even the films of his I don't particularly care for, I respect. Killing off the Little Mermaid is one of the few creative decisions I would seriously question him about. I do love these designs though, but look at this sea witch. Can you imagine if this had been the first Disney movie I ever saw? The sea witch would have terrified me, and I would have cried for days after seeing Ariel die. Most likely afterwards, every time I saw the Disney logo, I would have ran screaming from the room for fear of ever seeing anything like the Little Mermaid ever again. Regardless, I have no doubt that had he made this version, it would have been full of heart and passion. I would still take the Disney movie we actually got over an adaptation with a sad ending any day of the week. But I can't say the same about any of its follow-ups. Is it better for a Little Mermaid adaptation to be harmless fluff without any artistic merit? Or is it better to be a tragedy that, while depressing, has actual quality in it?
Life's full of tough choices, isn't it?
I may never know the answer to that question, or it might change depending on my mood, but I do know this. I have a newfound appreciation for all the Little Mermaid adaptations which meet in the middle with both a happy ending as well as any semblance of quality, and I wish there were more of them. But then I wish that mermaids were used more in media, period. In my quest for more mermaid stories, I have stumbled into some interesting things I might not have watched otherwise, like Super 6, a 60s cartoon which isn't great but has some great things in it, especially the short starring Super Scuba, who has a mermaid sidekick named Bubbles. As far as I can tell, she is the first recurring mermaid character in animation, and that makes the show worthy of at least a footnote in my book. She's cute, and if I ever did a countdown of my favorite animated mermaids, there are so few she would easily make the list.
Oh!
I can't help but wonder how the amount of mermaid stories would be affected if the Little Mermaid didn't exist. Would there be even fewer mermaid appearances than there are already? Or would a better fairy tale about mermaids have come along that would make stories featuring them more common? Better yet, could we have gotten the same positive results by the original story being just a bit happier? Can it be happier? The answer is yes. The best straightforward adaptation I discovered while doing research for this video is one from World Fairytale series, an anime that tells classic stories in 22 minutes. It's a solid retelling, perhaps a bit by the numbers, but it's elevated by the animation and voice acting. What it really gets right is the ending. While skimming through it, I lost all hope as soon as I saw the knife, because normally that's a sign you are in a bad Little Mermaid timeline, but this and the Shirley Temple storybook version are the only ones to subvert that. The prince wakes up after the Little Mermaid spares his life and sees her throw herself into the ocean. He dives in to rescue her, and as he grabs her, realizes that she was the one who saved him. This is before the prince married the princess, so his love is able to keep her from turning into sea foam right before dawn's light touches her. He thinks that he was too late to save her from drowning, but she regains consciousness and even gets her voice back. They kiss and presumably live happily ever after. This is quite possibly the most perfect ending to The Little Mermaid. She saves the prince's life only for him to save hers, which gives the story a good sense of symmetry. The prince remembers that it was the Little Mermaid who rescued him, and I don't even look upon the princess as villainous at all. I wish that this was how the original story ended, so that this was a scene I could look forward to seeing in every adaptation, like the Beast dying in Beauty and the Beast. That's my favorite fairy tale because that scene always gets me. Even when they did it on the Muppet Show, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness. This version is so good, I wish that it was a longer multi-part story. Even a second part would have done wonders for giving the script time to breathe. I was curious if such a thing had ever been done, and it turns out there has. There is a 1971 anime called Andersen Monogatari, which is dedicated entirely to adapting his stories, some of which spanned multiple episodes, including The Little Mermaid. I was surprised to see that this walrus character predates Fritz as the true first animal companion any Little Mermaid ever had. But as they are both Japanese productions, Japan still has the honor. I couldn't find any subtitles for this 3-part version of the tale, but despite the cartoonish art style, it seems to be well done. The story appears on point and the voice acting is good, although I must comment on how it has the laziest sea witch design. I do get what they were going for. Only seeing her eyes does give her an aura of mystery, but overall it's just underwhelming compared to other versions of the character who were on screen for less than a minute but somehow still had more effort put into their designs. I've even seen much better looking sea witches in other anime from this time period. I still kind of like her as she reminds me of Queen Matalia in Sailor Moon. Despite the visual shortcomings, it has one of the most intense takes on the Little Mermaid attempting to kill the prince. Not only are he and his bride awake, everything goes quiet for a bit, and it's very effective. Although this is definitely a respectable version of the fairy tale, I have to admit the cartoonish art style bugs me. Some of my favorite animated series from the 2010s, like Steven Universe, use their cartoony art styles to great effect, lulling you into thinking that the series is going to be strictly lighthearted fare, only for them to pull the rug out from under you with heavy lore and even some dramatic moments which really blindsided me because I would have never expected them from a show that looked like this. The difference between that and this Little Mermaid is that things are never hopeless. The characters we like do recover even if it takes some time. But when you kill off the protagonist in a story with this art style, that's just a cruel twist of the knife for any kids watching it. Aside from the 60s animated Russian version, which makes everything look wonderfully surreal, I think that the original ending just works much better in adaptations with a more grounded art style. It's very hard for me to get emotionally invested in what's supposed to be a tragic story when I look at the character designs and keep thinking that any second Doug Funny is going to show up. Here's a question for Doug fans. Did he ever imagine Patty as a mermaid during one of his fantasy sequences? It also doesn't help when an adaptation in a show tries to have cute mascot characters hosting the story like the Pixies in Andersen Monogatari or Doc Croc and Yo-Yo in Sims Hologram. Again, credit where credit's due. This episode, despite being from a show aimed at younger audiences, has some nice animation and designs, aside from the prince looking like he's one ascot away from being a dead ringer for Fred Jones from Scooby-Doo. The Sea Witch is unique, and I especially love the design for the outfit the Little Mermaid wears after turning human. The transparent part serves to not only show off her new legs, but also resemble the tail she used to have.